But
I can't move the fucking car. My daughter has to get in. He won't move his car. My daughter has to get in. Move it. You parked it too close.
you
Yeah, you heard me. When you open that door,
does
you
she
hit
do
my
this a
own
lot?
car.
Is she okay?
No, she's fine. The car is parked too close to her car.
Do you see your tire?
Do you
Let's
see
get
your
serious.
tire? Do
Let's
you
get
see your
serious. You
tire?
see the line that
Do you
separates
see your
these?
tire? Look
Now
at
come
the
over here. Come over here. Come on. This is just for fun. This is just for fun. Just for fun. Look. And then look at this.
When you promote and glorify victimhood, people are going to see themselves as victims. Welcome back, beautiful and amazing human beings. This is Luke Radowski of WeAreChange.org. We have a lot to talk about, including the degradation of our society, mainly because of this new gender feminist, leftist, Marxist alliance, which we're going to talk about a little bit, and its effects on one of America's biggest cities. But predominantly, we are going to be talking about the bombshell news coming out that the names of every passenger on the Lolita Express will soon be revealed. That, along with other very important updates about, the story of the decade where the government was directly involved, aided, abetted, and participated in a child abuse ring for over 3 decades. Yeah, you would think something important to talk about, to update the American public on, which surprisingly we have very little mention of in the mainstream. Huh. Strange, isn't it? But that's why we have independent media that usually gets shadow banned, censored, and is now 100% demonetized, like this very YouTube channel, since we talk about these very important issues. And because of that, we need to be funded outside of YouTube. And one of the best, easiest, most amazing ways that we are supported is actually a way that supports you at the same time. And all it really takes for you to do as a viewer is to download and use the Brave browser. And when you do that, one, you save yourself a lot of time. You get an extra layer of privacy and security through your internet experience. But also, most importantly, you earn cryptocurrencies just for using an online browser that, in my opinion, is better and faster than Firefox and Chrome. And if you use Brave from our specific link, and if you use it for over 30 days, and you like it for over 30 days, which I'm very confident you will, we get rewarded just like you get rewarded. It's a win-win for everyone. There's no reason you shouldn't be doing this. And surprisingly, this is one of the main ways we are funded now. Yes, you guys literally just using a free browser, you getting rewarded, is one of the main ways that we as an independent media organization are allowed to survive and sustain ourselves. So yeah, just download Brave from our specific link down below, and you help sustain independent media. Now, the video that we started earlier is really a testament to a kind of new line of approved thinking by the establishment, by big social tech media companies, by also, of course, a lot of multinational corporations that are pushing this kind of new gender, feminist, leftist, Marxist victimhood promotion of ideas that essentially actually do the opposite of what they say that they are doing. And some of America's biggest cities have been hit hardest by some of these politicians enacting this ideology. The DOJ has even released statements today identifying New York City, Portland, and Seattle as, quote, jurisdictions that have permitted violence and destruction of property persist and have refused to undertake reasonable measures to counteract criminal activity. And from numerous incidences, too many to mention now, this is an accurate statement. We have to understand that these are also similar jurisdictions that cracked down on lockdown protests while promoting other protests and turning a blind eye towards criminality. All the while, they shut down businesses all in the name of public safety. Yes, and that was even done unironically. But after these demented politicians destroyed business, they are now proposing a 10% sickness surcharge that they're going to be, quote, allowing restaurants in New York City to add to patrons of the business for the damages that the politicians caused themselves. Yes, because more taxes by morally corrupt, bankrupt individuals that can't balance a checkbook are in billions of dollars in debt is really going to be the answer to their destruction of free enterprise in already one of the most highly taxed jurisdictions in all of the United States. And as a former New York City resident, this is absolutely infuriating. We already have the income tax, the sales tax, property tax, capital gains tax, inheritance tax, and if you live in New York City, a New York State tax and a New York City tax on top of all these other taxes that I just mentioned, fueling and financing these bastardized ideas that sow havoc and chaos into the average lives of individuals who just want to be left alone. This is why there's a mass exodus of New York City. This is why there will be a continued exodus and no return in sight for one of America's greatest cities. And if your local taxes aren't going towards the destruction of your city, they're usually going to the federal government that predominantly spends it on the military-industrial complex or establishing a system that aids and abets child abusers for over 3 decades. Yeah, the system's pretty rotten to the core, but now we got some bombshell information that we might even see exactly how rotten it is with the breaking news that all passengers on the Lolita Express, on Jeffrey Epstein's flights, will be named. As we're finding out that the Attorney General of the U.S. Virgin Islands, where Epstein had his home, demanded the logs of 4 of his helicopters and 3 of his planes from 1998 to, of course, last year after Epstein's possible demise. This is, of course, a part of a lawsuit against the Epstein estate by the Attorney General of the Virgin Islands, a part of the lawsuit brought by the Attorney General, Denise and George, who has now officially subpoenaed these records. The subpoena specifically asks for the passenger list and, of course, any complaints, reports, or even personal notes from pilots made during the trips from the many helicopter and airplanes that Jeffrey Epstein had and was even associated with. In her subpoena, she's even demanding the names, contact details of anyone who even worked with the pilots or even interacted or, quote, even observed Jeffrey Epstein or any of his passengers associated with him, and spending time and investigating this case personally in the Virgin Islands, I could tell you that a lot of people know a lot of stuff, but many of them are too afraid to come forward. Many people that I spoke to said that what Epstein was doing there for many years was, quote, just an open secret that many people turned a blind eye to. And this was for years, even, of course, before Jeffrey Epstein's deal of a lifetime that he got from his first charges in Florida. Now, of course, we're going to be following this update, as many news organizations are saying that this latest news is sparking fear among many of his rich pals, and there was a lot of them. There's also a lot of interesting articles coming forward highlighting how Ghislaine Maxwell was someone who just photobombed a lot of individuals, and that a lot of the individuals, like here, Naomi Campbell, here, Mick Jagger, Ariana Huffington, and many other people like Piers Morgan, George Hamilton, and a lot of individuals who were pictured with her actually didn't know her and were just photobombed. Most prominently, we had Elon Musk come out recently and say that he was photobombed by Ghislaine Maxwell. And I think it's fair to highlight that there might have been 1 or 2 incidences like this, but we have to understand when we look at Jeffrey Epstein's black book that was released by one of his workers that actually was given more of a severe jail sentence than him for that particular act, we have to understand there was names and contact information for a lot of these individuals, and that's why we need more of these records than ever, and that's why we need to talk about, highlight, and support the Virgin Islands Attorney General and her work, and also have to understand that there's still an extremely large portion of information that is being kept away from the general public. Ghislaine Maxwell even recently was able to win in court proceedings that blocked and sealed her testimony from being released to the general public. Documents, by the way, that were supposed to be released, but under a last-minute motion were denied. I'm sorry, but the government hiding something that they were complicit in, especially with the abuse of children for so long, I don't think there should be any more frickin' secrecy here. Another important update to tell everyone about is that a federal judge is now postponing active civil lawsuits against Ghislaine Maxwell by many of her victims, saying that he needs to pause all of these court proceedings because it could, quote, adversely affect the criminal prosecution going against Ghislaine Maxwell. And when we look at the criminal prosecution of Ghislaine Maxwell, we have to understand that the feds gave her an extremely low level of charges dating back from the 1990s, before she was, of course, associated with many of the prominent individuals that she's named with. This will, of course, protect a lot of these powerful individuals, government officials, Clintons, and others from being a part of this criminal prosecution against Ghislaine Maxwell. So the feds, according to many of her victims, are charging her with very little charges. There haven't been new charges announced. There definitely should be, especially with all the evidence, all the allegations against her. And what's really going to be important here is, of course, the court of public attention, our public scrutiny, our eyes and ears on this particular case, demanding, of course, truth and accountability. Again, the main charges is that she, quote, groomed girls for Epstein. But when we look at the testimony of many of the victims, she did a lot more than just that. There was a level of psychological control and abuse that's really absolutely strange and mind-boggling, with even Virginia Roberts Giuffre recently coming out and was talking about how victims of Epstein, many of them children, had a very strict diet so their victims could look skinny and, quote, prepubescent. There's a lot of other creepy details that we know so far, and we still don't even know the full story of exactly what's happening here. And another important aspect to understand here is that there are also a lot of psyops, as we have previously seen Ghislaine Maxwell manipulate photos, release them to the press, and now, according from anonymous sources, there have been more photos sent of Jeffrey Epstein on his infamous island, many of them featuring Sarah Kellen, and strangely Epstein always being pictured in long pants, especially with him on a jet ski. And of course, many people are theorizing that a lot of these pictures are being released on purpose by Ghislaine Maxwell and her legal team, as they have done previously under an anonymous pseudonym. And we have to understand, a lot of this goes back to former media tycoon, also intelligence agency connected media mogul Robert Maxwell. He was known as a Rupert Murdoch media figure who, of course, stolen hundreds of millions of dollars from his company's pension fund after his mysterious death in 1991 on his boat that was named Lady Ghislaine, after, of course, his daughter. And according to an associate of Jean-Luc Bernet, it was Ghislaine's father, Robert Maxwell, is where Jeffrey Epstein got his mystery money that, of course, no one could account for, that many major banks broke many rules to transfer and to handle, with, of course, very little accountability and oversight, as he was using the big financial centers at his own personal whim. You know, institutions like Deutsche Bank that didn't follow any rules when it came to Epstein towards, of course, his larger child trafficking operation. Truly, evil doesn't even describe what was happening on here. And of course, Ghislaine's father was a British socialite, connected, of course, also to the royal family, which, of course, Jeffrey Epstein was also connected to Prince Andrew, and other elements of the, quote, royal family that always seems to have problems with their associations with child abusers. Another important lead in this particular case is the fact that a British celebrity chef who worked for Jeffrey Epstein for over 4 years has decided to, quote, fully cooperate with this investigation against Jeffrey Epstein. And of course, with this happening, this puts a lot of pressure on the pedo prince, who of course still hasn't testified and complied with investigators in this particular case. Again, we need more public pressure than ever to squeeze and raise awareness on these individuals who were associated with these monsters in order to get justice for the thousands of innocent children that were affected here. Now, of course, already Prince Andrew is being shunned by major kind of establishment figures in his home country of the United Kingdom, but that is definitely not enough, especially with so many of the details here surrounding what happened with Jeffrey Epstein, Prince Andrew, Ghislaine Maxwell, and many other world elites is still shrouded in mystery. There's a lot of coincidences here, especially with even the NXIVM head, who was also connected with the Clintons, also being in the same jail as Ghislaine Maxwell. And after the case of Jeffrey Epstein, we truly have to wonder what is really going on here, since, of course, the government keeps coming up as complicit in this larger abuse ring that they were cooperating and working with. So yeah, lots of good news today, especially with the subpoena, especially with people and victims and witnesses working together with investigators. Slowly and surely, this case is being cracked open, but the best way to get it out there is, of course, to share these videos, to do your own homework, to do your own research, but most importantly, when you do find some important information, getting it out there to the general public. There's a huge algorithm, there's a huge big tech monopoly that is downranking, that is making sure less and less people see this content, and the only way that they are seeing it is because of your individual, small, independent action sharing this video. Because you do that, I am still here, and I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for you, amazing human beings, doing that. And that's why I love you guys. Stay tuned for more here on WeAreChange.org.